I have the pleasure of being with a really great photographer who, if you see his images of the 60s, 70s, with rock and roll, with great musicians, with jazz, Jim Marshall is respected amongst the greatest of photographers. You've seen his pictures of Jimi Hendrix and Janis Joplin and the Doors, Jim Morrison, and the Beatles. Jim is a legend in his own time. We're in a restaurant in New York, so if you hear any background noises, it's because of that. Jim, it's a pleasure to be with you.
Thank you, Robert. One of the things Robert said is that he's a legend in his own time. Well, you know, it's like a Clint Eastwood line, you're a legend in your own mind. But, I mean, I have, thank you for having me do this, and I've never taken me seriously, take my work seriously. I have been very fortunate in what I got to do, the people I got to meet, the jazz world, the giants that I got to sit with, to get to know. And the thing about my work, I think, and about the work of another photographer, David Garr, Barry Feinstein, Baron Woolman, some of us, that Henry Diltz in L.A., we were being historians at the time without knowing what we were being. We go back 30 years, 40 years, say, my God, we documented a part of our country's history, a special part of it, especially for me, the halcyon years of the 60s. And we were historians without knowing it, documentarians. But for me, it was never just a job. And also on my work, and I don't want this to sound so self-conscious, but if I point a camera at somebody, whether it's for fun, whether they know I'm taking a picture or not, there's a covenant with me. There's a trust I will not, and I've never permitted, I will not permit that trust to be violated. There's a covenant, and someone fucks with it and does that with my work, they're going to have to deal with me. I will not permit my work to be violated on any level.
What was the most exciting part of your career, the person that you photographed that really made you feel great about what you're doing and made you feel like this is all such a fantasy to be involved as a career?
Well, that's a hell of a question because I can't even begin to answer it. But of all the years and I'm sitting here in this restaurant, man, we probably chased away half the customers. We've been a little outrageous tonight. But all the people I photographed, the person, there was Jimmy, there was Janis, there was so many, Christopherson, but the one that's meant the most to me, whose family and her have trusted me over 42 years, is Joan Baez. It's really weird. I love that girl so much, and we've done pictures over so many years of her and her late sister Mimi. And looking at, I go back and I go look at my work, and I realize how very lucky I've been what I got to do. But Joan was the most special over all these years. Hendrix was magic, Stones, Beatles, so many. Zepp, all different levels of either craziness or whatever. But over all the years, the trust, Johnny Cash especially, but the trust that Joan Baez and her family have given me over 40 years, it's something very sacred to me, something I feel very special about.
And something that is, right now, Jim Marshall's picking up a check for this dinner in this restaurant.
Jim Marshall's having a goddamn heart attack, too. Need money. Hello. Anybody got money, spare change?
How did you get started in this whole business of photography? When did you start, and how did you get started?
I don't know how long this is going to be on your thing. When I was 7 or 10 years old, 8, 9 years old, I ran a track meet as a kid, and I had a baby brownie in them days. And a guy at the track meet was taking pictures for the school, took a picture of me, and he made a print for the families, you know, your mother and fathers. It was razor sharp. And I had never seen anything like that. And I go, oh my God, this man has a magic box. And I started when my mother died about 10 years ago, 15 years ago. God just brought me a check. I would have a heart attack. But anyway, I found a scrapbook in her house where we were going through her stuff. And there's some really dumbass sailboats on the cover. But I opened it up. This is when I was maybe just after World War II, a couple of years. There were pictures of cameras, pictures of cameras cut out of magazines, pasted in a scrapbook, cut out with razor blade perfection, with the price written in pencil. We're talking a scrapbook, it's about 1.5 inches thick. It was the fantasy of a young kid. And maybe that started it. I don't know. A psychiatrist could have a field day with that. But in the Air Force military, I took snapshots. The first time I picked up a Leica M2, I knew that's what I wanted. It felt that right. And I was hanging out in clubs in North Beach, San Francisco, at the end of the beatnik days, and everyone I knew was a writer, poet, photographer, dancer, whatever. And I started taking pictures, and I remember the first picture I ever sold. Wow, I thought it was a big deal. I got $15. It was for a shot of a artist comedian named Lord Buckley, Richard Lord Buckley. It was for a little cover of a booklet of his poems. Man, did I think I was a big deal. $15. Robert's got a question.
Well, let's skip from there to what do you feel that was the thing that really made your career? What made it all happen? What was the photograph you took? What was the situation?
I don't think it was any one picture. I moved to New York from San Francisco in June of '62 and got here at the height of the folk music days and started photographing. Was very fortunate. Did a lot of record covers for Columbia Records, met some of the great jazz artists at the time, going to clubs photographing, and there was no PR people, no jerks around. And I don't think it was any one picture. I think it was a body of work that slowly grew over the years. There have been some photographers that 1 or 2 shoots or jobs made them overnight. I think it took me a long time. But it built slowly, and I'd like to think it built on trust. That the people knew, some of these giants of the music business knew I wanted to take good pictures. And then in '64, I moved back to San Francisco, and went back there when the rock and roll scene was just starting to bloom. And was right there at the time. I was kind of well known then. I just went from there, but it was never one picture, never one job. It was over a period of years, and a long time, never just one thing. I just think the body of work has been more important than any one picture. No, there's the icon pictures of Janis with the Southern Comfort, Dylan rolling the tire, Johnny Cash flipping the bird, Jimmy with sound check Monterey. There were a half a dozen pictures that have become iconic. What's the word I want? Icon pictures or whatever. And I was lucky to be there. And again, the only picture I don't think I'm a great photographer. I'm not. I think I'm a reporter with a camera who was trusted, who's never violated the trust. The only picture I really created from scratch was the Allman Brothers Fillmore East. We did the picture, it's an album cover, and I had the idea, did the whole thing in Macon, Georgia. One time I met some asshole in San Francisco that out of all the people in the world to pick out to lie about, we were talking, and he said, asked him what he does, and he said he was a photographer. I said, what have you done? He goes, well, I did the album cover for the Allman Brothers Fillmore East. Now this dumb idiot, out of all the people in the world that picked the light, who was the guy that took the picture. And I let him go on and on with it, with the story. That album, the Allman Brothers Live at Fillmore East, none of the pictures were taken at the Fillmore East. They were done in Macon, Georgia, LA, and San Francisco. Because when I was at Fillmore East for the session, I was so stoned I couldn't pick up a camera. I'm not inspired anymore. And it's like, The man that's interviewed me, Robert Farber, has 3 children. I have none. My pictures of my children. If you put 100 images in front of me right now of my work, I could tell you where it was taken, what lens I had, what camera I had, and what the exposure was. These are my children. That's what I remember. I don't know where I put a goddamn necktie earlier today. But today is November 6th, 2001. I don't remember yesterday, but I remember 40 years ago what lens, what camera, what exactly was happening at that time. I think over the years, being an insecure kid from a poor family, I think the acceptance and the trust built over the years, it was the most important. And again, and not to belabor the point, the trust that certain artists have given me, Johnny Cash, Christopherson, a lot of other artists, but more important than most, Joan Baez. The trust that family and her and her late sister Mimi have given me means more to me than anything in the world, is the trust. That's the most, not one picture, it's the body of pictures. I don't know I have no other way to explain. But you mentioned Janis Joplin. There were 5 of us. Barry Feinstein, Baron Woolman, David Garr, Herbie Green, Bob Seidemann, and me, 6 of us. Janis was not the prettiest girl in the world, but man, she was so fucking beautiful because she wasn't afraid of the camera. She never, ever put restrictions. No, just go ahead and do what you're doing. Again, it was the trust. Even all of us photographed her differently under different situations, but it was the trust. That's the other way to say my work, that whoever these people were, they trusted me with my camera, and they knew I wouldn't lie with my camera. And that's the thing I've never done, is lie with that camera. I've never, ever, ever done that. I've done one picture in my life we manipulated with Photoshop, and it was a portrait of a friend and his wife, and one frame was better than another, so we put the 2 heads together, and that was it. My friend Timothy White and his lovely wife Elisa, and that's the only time I've ever done it. I don't crop, I don't manipulate, I don't do nothing. Everything is what you see is what you get. My stuff is straight on. Me and that French guy, Hank Carter, you all know who he is? Henri Cartier-Bresson, that pretentious, pissy old Frenchman. And I'm gonna say this in front of the world. I want to kiss David Douglas Duncan on the mouth because he took a roll of Bresson. We're having coffee at Bresson. He's made his life for 70 years taking pictures. He got all pissy. 90-year-old fart got pissy because David Douglas Duncan, who I would lay in front of a truck for, who I think is one of the greatest photojournalists of all time, did a roll of film on Bresson, and Bresson got pissy, and he got so pissy he banned the book in France.
You know, it's funny because you mentioned David Douglas Duncan, and it was the first photographic book I ever bought, and the first person that most inspired me more than anyone else, and I'm so far removed from photojournalism, but I absolutely agree with you.
You know, like Louis Armstrong once said, name only 2 kinds of music, good music and bad music. Well, David Douglas Duncan is a great photographer. Whether you photograph like him or not, you appreciate. You know, Duncan now, he's got to be well into his 80s. This is 2001 as we're speaking tonight. This man went from photographing the Japs surrendering on the Missouri in Tokyo Bay to Korea, to Nam. He photographed the Marines at Chosin Reservoir. He photographed the Marines at Da Nang. And the Picasso books are a whole other ball game, man. But his work spanned over 50 years. I don't think he ever took, there are some photographers you look at their work and you go, oh my God. And maybe someday someone will say that about me, that he wasn't too bad over all the years. That's like not a bad bunch of stuff. My book, Not Fade Away, was published by Little Brown, Bullfinch. It's one of the biggest selling music photo book of all time. I'm going to do a twin to it called As Time Goes By. Jimi Hendrix was on the cover of Not Fade Away. The jazz book will be called As Time Goes By, and it'll be John Coltrane on the cover. But I waited many, many, many years to do Not Fade Away, and I waited to do it, and I did it right. There's only one mistake in the book, and it was my mistake because I captured one picture with one name wrong, and I have been living that down for 4 years, but it's not a big deal. The book was designed right, it was printed beautifully, and if I've only in my life got one book ever that's going to come out of me, well, it was a damn good book. And the other mistake in front of God and everybody tonight is November 6th, 2001. I'm sitting with Robert Farber, with Carol, last name? Bergenshire, and Kayla Lindquist. Kayla Lindquist, will you marry me? I'm asking her in front of God, and Mr. Lindquist, if you listen to this crap, I want to marry your daughter. I tell you what, if you edit this part out and this doesn't run, I'm going to sue you. Kayla asked about the late Steve Goodman, who was this wonderful young man out of Chicago. He died a long time ago. Steve was very young. Steve Goodman was the man who wrote The City of New Orleans. And he was opening. No, Arlo didn't write the goddamn song. Steve Goodman did. Willie Nelson did a Gap, not the Gap, but a Wrangler Jean commercial once. Had used, Steve's song. Stephen had cancer, and he was dying from the chemo from the cancer. 1983, we're in Oregon, Eugene, Oregon, matter of fact. And I was not taking pictures. And he asked me, he said, Jimmy, you got a minute? I go, of course. He goes, thanks for the courtesy of not pointing the camera at me, but I want to be in your book someday. Go ahead and take some pictures. And I took the pictures, half a roll, dressing room before show. And the haunting look in his eyes, we knew he was dying. He knew he was dying. And he said, I'd like to be in your book someday. And I made him a promise. I goes, if you're not in my book, my first book, if you're not in the book, there'll be no book. Well, there's a book, and Stephen Goodman's in it. God bless Stephen.
Your work has been seen by so many millions of people, and it's so inspirational for a photographer just starting. And tell them which direction to take it and how to really get in touch with what their passion might really be.
Well, the world of the photography in the entertainment field is so much different now. You have these 2-bit PR people, insecure managers, in general, all around assholes around, with a wall between you and the artist. I think 90% of the time you get to the artist directly, it's not a problem. There's a young photographer now shoots very much like me, a young man named Danny Clinch, who I call him wannabe because he shoots like me, and I'm saying that in a derogatory way because Danny and his wife know I love him. But it's different now, and it is very hard to establish a trust because you don't get the time to do it. And we're going to finish this now because the restaurant's kicking our butt out. But I think my work is second to one. Everybody says second to none. Well, mine's second to one. And there's a photographer in Brooklyn, and he's about 10 years older than me, and the old fart lies about his age, David Garr, G-A-H-R. I think my work and all of us who worked in the music field, I believe this to my very fiber of my being that our work pales to his. He's that good. And he's an old cranky old man, and I love him, and his work is that good. And I feel that any time I can share a page in a magazine with him, I'm lucky. That's how much I think about him. We're done. We're out of here. And he hasn't even, this guy, Robert Farber, hadn't even bought me a goddamn drink tonight.